Hello, everyone, and welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast. My name is Cameron Bell. I am your host, as always, here on our extra show. And it's been a loud and quiet week. So I thought I'd bring on someone who could be equally loud and equally quiet when he wants to be. And that is a stealth destroyer, Andy McGowan. Andy, how are you? Have you recovered from your trip onto the park at Ibrox last Sunday? I saw you with your face covering. I knew it was you, because it was only casual I've ever seen carrying a laptop that was running an Excel sheet on it at the time. But you've been all right since. You've not had been lifted or anything like that. I'm taking it as read.
My balaclava was on so tight it's damaged my throat. I was the one with the Power Rangers balaclava on.
Yeah, but you had it on backwards, so that's why you ran into the goalposts in front of the Copeland.
And when I was doing a karate kick, I hurt my hip a wee bit. I've been going to Cairo all week.
Aye, these things happen, but it's just a
I told him I'd done it. I said, no, I've done it hoovering, mate.
Oh, if you didn't laugh, you would cry. Like, Andy, let's get serious. It has been a very interesting week in the life of Rangers, Celtic, the Scottish media, the government, Scottish police. Everybody's had their say apart from the two primary clubs involved. I'm keen to get your thoughts now that the dust has somewhat settled since last Sunday, and where you're at with it all now.
The floor is mine then. Listen, I've been doing London all week, right? So I've actually quite enjoyed being one removed for the usual intense nonsense that comes out. It's a very serious matter, right? This isn't something that we can just walk past and say, oh, well, like, these things happen. You can't have almost a fight between two sets of fans on the pitch at Ibrox in front of the cameras in your showcase game. You can't have that and then downplay it or walk away from it or just say, oh, well, I recognise that, right? But this is the third time I've witnessed this at a Rangers game. Motherwell, when was that? 2014, Hampden 2016, and then on Sunday. You also can't walk away from responsibility. You can't turn around and say, oh, well, it's Celtic fans or it's this, that, and deflect. You've got to be honest with yourself as well. I'm a fan of Union Bears. I've been on the Heart and Hand podcast many a time, extolling the virtues of what I think of them, and it's not just a Union Bears problem. It's a bit more than that. Where I'm at with it, Cammy, where do you start? I think that the primary fault lies with Play Scotland, and that's not a deflection tactic. I think Rangers in the deep shit in terms of their security planning. Really, I think that's something we've really got to face up to. I think that Celtic equally have major issues and questions to answer with regards to the fact that they're having their own security issues in their stadium and they were transplanted into our stadium. Right? I don't think that's a question. I think that's a statement of fact. And my mind's been drifting back to a game that you might think is unrelated, Cammy, but bear with me here, listeners. Remember when Goldson scored the last minute winner at Rugby Park and we had a wee excursion onto the pitch and there was people dancing on top of the disabled shed and all that kind of stuff at Rugby Park? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember it because you were not. I know we were joking at the start, but you were kind of part of the conversation or something like that. That's why I remember it.
There was a radio show, I can't remember, Rock Sport or something. Anyway, there was a radio show and it was me and a Kilmarnock supporting ex-cop that were on there, and I drift back to that because at that point I says the behaviour's not acceptable. Rangers fans shouldn't be crowding because I think there was four forgeries and there was people sneaking in or I says Rangers fans cannot do what they did in terms of making that place too busy, and they shouldn't be dancing on the disabled bays and they shouldn't be getting on the pitch and the rest of it, and you've got to take full responsibility for your individual behaviour and as a collective. But there's not much you can do as a collective, you know. What am I going to do? Am I going to stop folk running on the park? But my point that day remains, and my point that day was the police's job is to mitigate all potential circumstances that could unfold and to ensure the safety of everybody in the stadium. Now, it's also Rangers' responsibility, it's their stadium. So this isn't, and I really want to make sure folk don't think this is a free pass to hooliganism. It's no. But if you'd say to me, Andy, this is the way this is going to unfold, we're going to have a nothing each draw, extra time, and then there's going to be penalties and Celtic winning penalties, which I think will happen at that point. I'm pretty sure that I'd have said to you, there's likely going to be at least a small pitch invasion. There's going to be people jumping over the barriers, and they should be ready for it. And that's what happened. If you then say to me, right, so you'll see that pitch invasion you've just forecast, it turns into Godin, and it turns into a tricolour, and it turns into fans going to the opposition fans and generally noising them up. What do you think is going to happen next? I'd say there'll be Rangers fans on the pitch and they'll not take it lightly. Because that's what happened at Hampden. I remember at Hampden, the Hibs fans, it turned out, Rod Petrie portrayed it as exuberance. It was probably exuberance to start with. And then the exuberance started to become a large-scale invasion of pitch, which then became uncontrolled, which then became us, me, you, standing there having to face up to fans absolutely goading us. And you can say what you want about self-control and the rest of it. There is no football support in the world that will stand and watch that and every single one of them walk away and turn their back. It takes one person to jump the barrier and another will follow and another will follow, and the next thing you've got a riot in your hands. And we never quite go there on Saturday because it's a different dynamic at Ibrox. You'd lose your season ticket and all the rest of it. See, if I was handing that happened, you'd had a replay of 1980 or 81, whatever it was. So what I'm trying to drive at here, Cammy, is that I not for a second absolve anybody that was on that pitch. I don't absolve some of the stuff I saw, the fighting, flares getting flung, all that stuff's unacceptable and is really quite dangerous and it can take us anywhere, right? Not a good place. But I'm telling you right now, Police Scotland are angry that Rangers and Celtic haven't spoken out because they are the ones that the spotlights fell upon and they know it. And that, I can't remember their name, but the spokesperson that kind of get rolled out the other day, a lot of nonsense, absolute lot of nonsense. And they can try and turn the spotlight back on Rangers and Celtic. Rangers and Celtic have got questions to answer, supporters have got questions to answer, but Police Scotland are the people who should be mitigating for everything. Their plans were inadequate. Where did you park, Cammy?
I parked up. Well, actually, that's a lie. I beg your pardon. I parked in town and got the subway over, whereas normally I would have parked up near Drumbrake. So I tend to avoid it on Old Firm days because it flits pretty close to that end. What I will do, Andy, and this might determine the next part of our conversation because for the last 8 minutes when we've been talking about this, we started recording just after 5:30 on Thursday, and Rangers have released a statement. So I will read that out for you right now. I don't know why Rangers had to wait until we started recording.
You don't tell them, Cammy, just tell them extra.
Exactly, honestly. Anyway, I'll read this out to you if you've not had a chance to read it when you get a chance to listen to this, folks. Rangers support independent review. Following the events of Sunday's Scottish Cup fixture at Ibrox, we have spent the past few days in discussions with our staff, supporter groups and the relevant authorities, and we will continue to work closely with Police Scotland, Glasgow City Council, the Scottish FA and the Safety Advisory Group in the weeks ahead. The disorder that occurred on Sunday was unacceptable and we condemn it unequivocally. Safety must always come first in football for supporters, players and everyone working in and around the game. And we also want to recognise the efforts of the many staff, stewards and emergency services who operated in extremely difficult circumstances on the day. There are now a number of serious issues which require proper examination. For that reason, we agree that there should be a fully independent review into the events surrounding the match. That review must be thorough and wide-ranging, examining the decisions and actions of all the relevant parties. Its scope must include the broader context around this fixture, from the initial decisions and ticket allocations through to the sequence of incidents that followed the match. All parties must be prepared to have their action and decision-making subjected to proper scrutiny. Where individuals are identified and convicted of offences connected to the match, the club will take action and impose appropriate sanctions, including the potential withdrawal of ticketing privileges and stadium bans. We will all approach all regulatory engagement responsibility and cooperate fully with the authorities as the facts are established. At the same time, we will represent the club and our supporters robustly. We recognise that many fans want the club to say more at this stage, and supporters should be assured that we are across the detail of the issues being discussed and the questions being raised. However, it's important that we respect any ongoing investigative or judicial processes and do nothing that could prejudice them. There will be an appropriate time to address those matters fully. What we can say now is that the issues of the stadium safety and the legacy of the Ibrox disaster are deeply personal to this club. We were appalled to discover graffiti within the stadium referencing that tragedy. The memory of the 66 supporters who lost their lives in January 1971 deserves dignity and respect. To desecrate their memory is vile, it is cowardly, it is shameful. This is not football rivalry and it's not banter. It is the abuse of a tragedy that claimed 66 lives. Finally, it is important that the reputation of Rangers supporters is treated fairly in this discussion. Tens of thousands of people attended Ibrox on Sunday simply to support their team with pride and to watch a football match. We will not accept a narrative that ignores the full context of what happens. For now, it would not be appropriate to comment further. Right, wait, okay, I'm not repeating that, Andy. It was a lengthy statement for the club. I'll be honest with you, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's really, really good. And I want to say a couple of things on this because obviously we were going to talk about this in terms of the club responses. You obviously touched on it when you were talking. I despise this idea that we would have to farm out a statement for statement's sake. And I don't care what anyone says. And by the way, I'll include this in Celtic as well, right? So I'm trying to be fair. When the authorities involved, whether it's going to be the police, the government, Glasgow City Council, whomever, are adamant and they demand a response from the clubs to be made publicly, I do not know what purpose that serves other than to be able to line that club up for criticism. Also from that as well, I think that Rangers and Celtic were playing a wee game of whoever blinks first. And there was probably a bit of a Mexican standoff in terms of who was going to be able to release a statement. And I applaud Rangers for keeping their powder dry and not being able to rush something out just to be first. I don't even know if Celtic have put a statement out. I don't care if they have or not because I'm not really interested in reading it. I can guess what it's going to say, and that will simply be, it's not our fault. They're the badgins. Leave us alone. As they have done with so many other statements in the past. Andy, quick thoughts on that statement, and then I'll give you my tuppence worth in terms of what I've kind of been thinking about for the last few days.
I think it's absolutely correct in tone, content, and narrative. So I think the PR, Ibrox, it was Greg Miller or whoever it was, has done an extremely good job here. To your point about why would the authorities be wanting a statement from Rangers or Celtic, it's because that's the social structure we've now got in Scotland. Everything's done by soundbite, everything's done by controlling narrative, and it's symptomatic of the kind of government we're under just now. Everything's a statement, everything's a virtue signal, nothing's real, nothing's actually what's the word I'm scraping for here? Nothing's genuine, right? What we've got there is an adult response, is how I would see it, right? I particularly like the fact that they're talking about the sequence of incidents that followed the match, the sequence of incidents that followed the match, right? And this is what I'm saying, and they're talking about cause and effect, and there isn't. The adult thing to do here isn't to have a blame game, because if we're looking objectively, then Rangers did things right. I've told you, security's been a shambles. Whatever the planning that was signed off has been a shambles. you're Rangers fans, you can't just say, oh, well, they reacted, so therefore it's okay. It's not okay. But the sequence of incidents that happened following the match is a key sentence of that whole statement, because that is where the detail is. What happened? Right? This isn't just turn into a fight in a vacuum. The thing about the 66 and the Ibrox disaster is that have relations between Rangers and Celtic supporters ever been as bad? I don't know. You can talk about the bad old days, and I really think that there's been a pernicious poison that's went through it now in the past, ever since we went down. I think as a Rangers fan, we've seen Scottish society in a different way, because, all right, no one likes us, we don't care, but I didn't know that it was that much, because it was absolutely venomous what we went through then, and I think a lot of that has remained, just by the sheer fact that we're still here. But that 66 thing has been weaponised, not just by Celtic fans. I highlighted what went on across from me at Pataudry on Twitter. It ended up in the papers. I've seen it umpteen times, Easter Road in particular, when I'm close to the segregation. It's known. It's actually something where, as a grown man, me or you, Cammy, as a responsible adult, you've got to, you can see how people react, you can see how people can snap, you can see how people can actually go beyond what you think is reasonable. So I really, I'm not a big man for statements, and I don't look much into them, but that's more than a sop, that's more than a let's shut the papers up for a while. That's a serve a ball that's been thrown up and served, because, let's have an inquiry. That's basically what they're saying. Let's play ball and see what actually happened, and have an actual look into what happened those days. And by the way, all parties must be prepared to have their actions and decision making subject to proper scrutiny. So Rangers, they're not deflecting here. They're saying, let's talk about it, and we'll take our share of the blame if it's appropriate. But what you'll find is that Police Scotland have been shambolic here. The plan that was signed off by Rangers Security has been shambolic here. What went on in that stand on Sunday was criminal, and what went on in that stand on Sunday was beyond the pale of any moral high ground you want to talk about, and the proof is there for everybody to see. So it's not a case of us coming out fighting, Cammy, and I don't want to make it sound like it's kind of that's the way we're coming from. I just want the facts to come out, and I want a fair hearing for my club and for my supporters. Union Bears, or whoever you want to classify as the people in the park, are going to have to take their medicine as well. I think it will change. It'll have a far-reaching impact in terms of how all supporters are treated. I'm very interested. I've got tickets for Sunday at St Mirren. I'm very interested to see how that pans out, because I just can't see it being a case of status quo. I could go on and on, Cammy, but there's so many aspects here that have come to a head. I also think, just before I give you the mic back, Cammy, is that without being melodramatic, it's probably needed that we've hit a brick wall in this regard, because I think it was escalating, and you've seen what happened to that Celtic support outside the bus. That's horrendous. Stuff like that is just becoming a wee bit more frequent, and somebody's going to end up either really, really badly hurt or dead or whatever. And I don't say that to be shock value. It's just a natural escalation of what's been going on in the city, what's been going on between the two clubs, and it's been a natural escalation of the venom that's been injected into the Old Firm kind of bloodline. I like that, Cammy. I like that statement. I think it's exactly what was needed, and they were right to pause, and they were right to pick their time to release it. So well done to Rangers.
Yeah. If I had to have a criticism in the statement, and the one thing I did want included in it, Andy, is that I would have liked Rangers to have included an approximate summation of how much that damage cost us. And it's going to ultimately cost Celtic, understand that, but how much that damage ended up costing overall, because I think it's a huge indicator of the level that it's in. So I'll give you my kind of tuppence worth, and I'm keen to kind of get your thoughts on this, because I know that you've went through these experiences as well. So I'll rewind back to the New Year game at Parkhead. And now, if you haven't had a chance to go to Parkhead in recent times, I'll explain a little bit around the security procedures. Rangers fans have to be in the stadium 2 hours before kickoff. You are corralled at the Emirates Stadium across the road from Parkhead, wherein there is 2 lines of police security that will not allow you to cross the road. You're kept there, and in batches, you are then allowed to filter through, having shown your ticket. There is then another 2 separate lines of police officers. Then you cross the road as you're making entry towards the stadium, and there are countless stewards, all of whom are doing ticket checks. And then when you eventually get to the turnstile, there's fencing in to ensure that you're going into the appropriate turnstile, there isn't overcrowding, etc., etc. But there are strict security measures. And until last Sunday, Andy, I was of the opinion it was complete overkill. I'd been at Parkhead before where I'd maybe shown my ticket a couple of times on the way into the stadium, but you were given basically free reign. There was degrees of separation, but by and large, I could have walked down London Road to be able to get to Parkhead and then went into stadium that way. That is where I've got a huge concern about the preparation and the planning for what happened last Sunday, when 7 to 8 times the amount of fans that we took to Parkhead are coming into Ibrox, and then you start to see videos of fans bursting through the doors. I know that in some sections of the media, and to be fair, I'm slightly jealous of you being down in London because I've exposed myself more to some of this commentary than I really would have liked, because I've heard all of these things of, well, these fans tried to get in because the queuing was too long and they didn't want this. That's all shite.
Bullshit.
That's all shite. It's guys who turned up, either wanted to be able to do a doubler through the turnstile with somebody who did have a ticket, but when they then realised actually someone had got into the stadium, opened up a fire door, because they fire doors are never opened by stewards for this exact reason. You have to shepherd people in through turnstiles. Somebody's come in, opened up a fire door, and people have just made a run for it, and they've been able to get in. Then obviously you've got the vandalism that's happening within the Broomlin. Now, I will not expect a steward who's getting paid 10 quid an hour to turn around to a group of 10 guys who are sitting writing about the Ibrox disaster, sitting writing kill all Huns, the free Broomlin, etc., however else you want to do it. I don't expect that steward to walk over and take immediate action. If they need to get back up in, if they see that the damage is getting too severe, then they could alert whomever they need to alert, been able to go in there with a bit more of a heavy hand and then stop it. So I don't blame the stewarding within that. I blame the planning in terms of where that's happened. And here's the biggest failure for me, Andy. Now, I've also seen about the fact that people have heard for the Ibrox side, from the Rangers side of things, the guys who got in the park at Ibrox had heard about what happened in the Broomlin and all that. I think that's total shite. Effectively, what happened is people went on the park in response to Celtic fans coming on the park at the Broomlin. They tried to get into the Govan corner. They tried to get into the Govan. They tried to get into the enclosure. They were standing goading Ranger supporters, and our fans reacted in response. I don't believe it's anything whatsoever to do with fans bursting into the stadium or the damage that had been done in the Broomlin. It was because of what happened at the end of the game. None before that. Here's my question. If you are supervising that match and you're trying to ensure that the safety is coordinated to the highest possible degree, by the time that we get to extra time and penalties, all of the things that happened during the game should already have been reported. So you've had stadium access in from ticketless fans. There's over subscription within the Broomlin because there was fans on stairwells. You've seen, or you should have had, reports of numerous circumstances of damage, whether it's stickers, physical destruction, graffiti, whatever. So already you should be prepared that this could be an element that could get out of control if it goes to penalties and then Celtic win the penalty shootout. I don't understand where, like Camden, and you've been there, I've been there, so we've seen this for our own eyes, that there isn't a police cordon already in place before the penalties are taken, before that last... I've seen it happen with Rangers getting free kicks in the last minute of 90 minutes, where they anticipate that something could happen if that free kick is scored, if that winning penalty is scored. So therefore, you put a human barrier in place. And then in the few days that I've followed since Sunday, I've read what, for me, and this is my view, not heart and hand, right? This is my view, and I want to be clear on that. Statements from the police that are outright lies, and saying that they had a police presence 90 seconds after the penalties had been finished. That's a lie. That didn't happen. And there's videos that will support that. There was stewards in the park, but I failed to see as to where there was anywhere near an adequate police response. So to surmise my thoughts in terms of all of that, Andy, I mentioned to you, I actually mentioned to our boys within one of our chats, I hope that there's an independent review that happens as a result of this, and whether or not it comes under public inquiry, whatever has to happen, I've got no idea. But there has to be an independent party comes into this now to review how those safety protocols were put in place. If Rangers are to some degree responsible for that, then we take our medicine. But for me, the major failings here are how the police have not only planned that match, but how those safety parameters were executed during it, given all of the circumstances that unfolded.
I kind of disagree with you saying that if you run it forward and if it is a proper inquiry and it's fair-handed, then I think Rangers are going to come at it with a lot of criticism for the way they signed off on, right? There wasn't enough police in the stadium. Recognise that police have got staffing problems, there's a cost implication, all this kind of stuff, right? But you can't simultaneously say this is unacceptable and it shouldn't happen, and then say, but we didn't have enough people to come here. I know for a fact that the defrost police that are on the front line and get their uniform on for the day to police these kind of games. Coming out of the game, there's cops sitting in their vans outside the main stand, just the same as they were in Hampden that time. You came out and you're like, by the way, Champion of the Windy, do you know there's a riot in there? So,
and that's probably you're exactly right, by the way, because I remember seeing that myself. But that's what I'm talking about with the lack of response.
Aye, well, see, this isn't an anti-police thing, right? I could criticise the police for a lot of things, but all I'm talking about is this game, right? We know football. We know Rangers Celtic games. I've been to Mirren and I can count. We know how fans will respond. Match commanders should be tuned into that as well, and I'm sure they were. But they were caught totally unawares. And the point you make, Cammy, about the reporting of what's going on, there should have been alarm bells ringing from before the game. If they're telling us, as reported, that tifo that never got allowed on got set on fire, right? If they're telling us that the fire exits have been rushed, if you're telling us that there's been damage to the interior of the Broomland and there's been graffiti and all the rest of it, there's got to be cops saying, look, this is brewing here. Or at the very least, try and do something that stops it. I'm not advocating violence or bans, right? But see, when you're in Europe, it takes one ban for everybody to fall into line, right? And as much as we moan about it as travelling Rangers supporters, we're all savvy to that now. You go away with Rangers anywhere in Europe, and there's very, very few folk that aren't savvy to the fact that, if I fucking act arse here, I'm going to get scalped big time if a big Robocop cop are here. I don't think we need to do that in Scotland, but I think there needs to be a return to some form of jeopardy if you act it. Because in football grounds just now, you're generally there's nothing really happens if somebody steps out of line. It's the chap in the door 2 days later the nowadays, because they'll get you for CCTV. I don't know if that's the right approach anymore. So I would gladly welcome a formal inquiry into this. And again, I reiterate, this isn't about me blaming everything on the police. I'm telling you umpteen times here, I think Rangers are big time at fault here. And whoever carries a can for that will carry the can with their job, I think. But the circumstances, and again, that sequence of incidents that's referenced in the Rangers statement is utterly critical. How did we arrive at that? Did not just occur at a penalty kick out, the last penalty kick vacuum. You're built up to that point. The reason I asked you where you park, we park in Helen Street as a supporters bus, and we weren't even in Helen Street. I'm like, there's a Celtic fan. There's a Celtic bus. There's 5 Celtic fans walking down Helen Street. I'm like, what's going on? And that in isolation might not be a problem, but there was a number of Celtic buses going down Helen Street. I don't know where they were going to Govan or what, but there was a number of buses that I'm saying, well, they've obviously just ignored the, be in here tours before. And by the way, Celtic Park, you talked about the protocols there and how kind of draconian they are, but maybe there's an argument after that game. There's certainly an argument for it. But
Parkhead. No, Celtic Park.
Did I say Celtic Park? Oh my goodness, that's me verboten and amongst the Rangers support now.
Get it right. I'm just taking you out of all the heart group chats as well.
Aye, Parkhead. Anyway, there's been occasions there, because I usually go there in my car and park. I can't remember the street, but I park and I have to walk a wee bit. And there's been occasions there where I've seen the policing being inadequate there as well, because Celtic fans use that road as well. And I've seen fights and I've seen horses. I remember one not that long ago where there was an incident. So this isn't isolated to Ibrox, but this has been a particular flashpoint. Listen, we could talk all night about this. We could argue your case, we could argue their case, we could argue the police's case, we could go back and forth. A public inquiry should flush it out. But have I got confidence in a public inquiry in this country under this government going anywhere? No, I have not. And if the initial statements have come out from Police Scotland or anything that go by, then it's a defensive action. They wanted to put it on the Rangers Celtic. And again, we've got a watershed moment in terms of how ultra culture is approached in this country. But it's more than ultra culture; it's a social thing, and we could bore people to tears with amateur psychology about why young boys run on the park. But part of me understands it. Because I know how I feel. I know how I felt at Hampden. I know how I felt at Motherwell when we actually didn't react. And let's get back to Motherwell. If you recall that playoff game, you remember they were at it all game. Lee McCulloch gets poked in the face with a flag. They go through. They've obviously beat 1-6 in aggregate. They're on the park. They're goading. The Rangers fans did not react that day. I was an SPFL game, so it fell under SPFL jurisdiction. And what they got there was a solicitor-led committee deciding that they would get punished, but the punishment was put in the shelf for 18 months. And I don't know if it was ever actually implemented, you know that? So I would kind of classify, if you're wanting to say incursions onto the pitch and the rest of it, that was bad that day, if you recall. It could have turned into something serious and nasty. And I remember at the time saying, the Scottish FIB in general should be actually applauding the Rangers fans for turning their back that day. But I don't think you'll ever get the Rangers fans turning their back again. I don't think you'll get any fans turning their back if they do that. I defy anybody. A Dundee United Dundee game, I defy anything to happen of that ilk, and other fans don't react to it. It's easier for away fans to go in the park because there's less repercussions. You run on a park as an Ibrox season ticket holder, you'll not be a season ticket holder for long. So that's why any focus of policing had to be at the Celtic end. And your cordon point is absolutely correct. Have the horses in the corners. Have horses sitting waiting to come out at the final whistle.
According to the police, they were about to come on the park.
Aye.
Now, I don't know what they were doing. Maybe sleeping, or I don't know, having a jobby or something. They were about to come on the park as well. But yeah, listen, there's a lot obviously that we've talked about, and anyone who wants to go back, they can listen to David and David on the flagship, because David reported similar issues when his bus came across in the boat, came down by Helen Street, and there was Celtic fans roaming about there at that point as well. So there's definitely what needs to happen, and I dare say there's non-Rangers fans listening to this, so I'm going to give you a wee shot across the bow here, folks. If we do go through a public inquiry on this, it's the responsibility of every football fan to say this is not about football fans in terms of where this sits at. I think you make a great point, Andy, around the fact that there's degrees of self-policing that you have to do. And whilst I don't like it, I think that when you get to the stage of people appearing in papers because they're holding up, number 66 on their mobile phones and they're losing their jobs as a result of it, maybe think twice about it is probably the best way I can describe it. Act with some dignity and a wee bit of decency. Think about the fact that maybe children being crushed to death isn't a laughing matter. Maybe it's just a thought. But where you need to come into that in terms of how you want to be treated as a football fan, you should think about what the repercussions are going to be as a result of this. And I'm not willing to entertain this idea of any football fan turning around and saying, well, all of our fans are holier than thou. Because let me put that supposition to you. If Rangers fans had not entered the park last Sunday, not a single person had went onto the pitch from any of the Rangers stands, I can guarantee you there wouldn't be a single piece in any of the media anywhere that turns around and says, well done to Rangers fans for no reacting. That just simply wouldn't exist.
It would be accepted as it would be exuberance all over again. Rod Petrie is exuberance because what Celtic, if I'm to make a prediction about what Celtic's response will be, it'll be euphoria, tearing singing throughout, subjected to it, and quite rightly they'll point out that if they've had anybody on that park attacked by a Rangers fan, that's not the first time that they've had their staff put in peril.
But in fairness though, Andy, their staff were put in peril because you can see that when players and their manager are getting selfies taken with the fans who came on the park. So
so see, in interest of fairness, I'm going to say something. See that I don't think that's on Martin O'Neill or any of the players, because they are just like we're just fit with fans. They are just fit with players and fit with staff, and they're in that moment if they sit and saying this could turn into a riot, they think the Rangers fans are going to have a part. I don't think so. So I'm going to cut them some slack there in terms of what their part to play was in it, because it's very, very hard in the moment to do the right thing as a responsible, a focal point, if you like. Right, they're players on the park. So I don't even hold any kind of they could have done that better. I just think that would have happened regardless. Fans on the park. It's not the first time, it happens all the time. Away games have had fans on the park, get last minute winners and all the rest of it. But Celtic will come out with that. The point is, no opposition fan or staff member should be in jeopardy at Ibrox, and we've let ourselves down with that ball incident before, and that might get brought into it as well. But on that day, there was almost a catastrophic failure in terms of strategy, planning, and implementation. Who does that for? Mostly to match commander, the people under him, and then you then look through what was the meetings that were held before this. We see all the time away for him in Europe. Cammy, see when it goes wrong away for him in Europe, you're like, we see to Greg Marshall something. Wait, the meetings did you have? Did you know that we were going to get put down that wee street that's a dead end? Or, you question what the weeks leading up to that were. We had an Old Firm game the week before. I'm led to believe there was less cops in the stadium on the cup tie than there was for the week before, despite there having 3 times as many fans. See if that's true. Who signed that off? Who suggested it? Who sat and did a health and safety and says, that makes sense? Somebody somewhere, or a committee, or a group of people that signed off on this should be sitting twitching just now, because this just didn't happen by accident.
No, very true, very true. Well, it gives me a lot of joy, Andy, to be able to talk about some football for a little bit as we get to the tail end of this week's show, as Rangers are back in league action as we head to the Simsa Stadium on Sunday to take on managerless St Mirren. Stephen Robinson has left St Mirren. He's now in charge at Aberdeen. That seems to have gone down well with Aberdeen fans, for what I've read. Lols. They'll have a temporary management team of Craig McLeish, Jamie Langfield and Al McManus playing us on Sunday, Andy. You would think that a team that's near the bottom of the table, they've lost their manager only a couple of days beforehand, they would be vulnerable. So how many goals do you think St Mirren will beat us by?
If we get through Sunday, and if we get through that Aberdeen game, anything can happen. And I know I'm Mr. Optimism. This isn't a question of optimism. This is a question of facts for me. The top six, if it remains as it is, and what I mean by that is points differences, no the actual people in the top six, the teams in the top six. Anything can happen, and that's why I don't expect us to win the league, because I don't think we've got enough firepower at the end of the day, and I don't think we can score goals when we really need it. I don't think we've got enough of that in the team, but anything can happen. So if Sunday is, I know it's the cliches of cliches, but it's another cup final, I actually think we'll take care of them. I know St Mirren's a hard place to go, and they're a physical team, and they make it difficult, and it might be a stormy Sunday if today's anything to go by, but I think we'll take care of it. And I'm actually, when you go.
No, I was going to say, do you know what, bizarrely, see if us, them and Hearts were all playing at 3 o'clock on Saturday, then I don't think it'd be a problem. But Celtic are at home to Motherwell. We know that should be a tough game. Hearts are the Saturday night kick-off away at Kelly. You know, if either of our rivals were to drop points, and then we go into the game on the Sunday, I struggle to believe this Rangers team can be motivated by that, because for regular listeners, they'll know I've spoken a lot about this team's mentality, and Danny Rule has now talked about it as well, and he's been a wee bit spicy with some of his responses. And I'll be honest with you, Andy, I'll never know this, right? But I wonder if that is Rule's way of being able to admit that there's a problem without saying that there's a problem. Because I struggle to see as to where this team reacts appropriately whenever we are in two situations. Firstly, drawing or losing, and being able to then go and adapt the response. The last time, I think, for my money, we really saw any of that was at Parkhead, that game we were talking about earlier on. Hasn't happened since January. Or alternatively, we are leading, and then we don't have the mentality to be able to get us across the line to secure that. So for Park, Ibrox against them, etc. So I think that there is an issue. I cannot escape this idea that I think you're right about firepower. I think that, again, if you just look at a couple of games against Celtic in the most recent round of fixtures, that we can have possession, but our product in the final third is poor in terms of decision making, in terms of crossing, in terms of finishing. But I also think as well at this point in time, this Rangers team, when it's got weight on its shoulders, struggles to get to its feet.
This topic is a hot topic mentality. It can sometimes veer into kind of cliche territory, and I think it's grossly oversimplified. I think first and foremost we've got a goal scoring across the squad problem, because mentality isn't something that just occurs. It's built and it grows over time, and it's not a quick thing, right? And if you are scoring a second goal to kill the game for Park, for example, then you get mentality from going to Fir Park and win the game easily, right? If you score a last minute winner and win the game when you didn't expect to, Livingston, anybody else want other games we've drew, then that builds mentality, belief, and then the next time you're in that position, you'll not get the replay of failure, you've got the replay of success that you're visualising. And I think that is the source of the questioning of mentality, because we're not building mentality because we're not scoring goals at the right times, and it's a squad problem. And if it's a squad problem, it's a personnel problem. And if it's a personnel problem, it's a recruitment problem. And we're only 5 months out for the debacle of the Martin area, and folks say to me, well, you can't keep going on. You can, because it was a worst Rangers team we'd seen with players that were shot to bits in terms of confidence, right? So therefore, you can't jump forward 5 months and say, I can't understand why they've not got the right mentality. They've not got the right mentality because they might not have it as a squad to do what's required. So other thing I'll get on my soapbox about is we've got the worst signing we've made, and you can quote me on this, is Miovski, because it's the most critical signing we failed to get right. Because we went into that game on Sunday and other games as well with Mikey Moore, 18-year-old, right? 18-year-old. Remember what you were like with an 18-year-old? 18-year-old and having to play a man's game and man's responsibility for Glasgow Rangers. Your Chermity, who, I don't know, is he 21 or something like that? He's finding his feet, he's getting better, but he's nowhere near the finished article. And you've got Ryan Nadiri, who I think is going to be an excellent player for us, but who, again, is a youngster and is finding his feet in Scottish football playing for Rangers, right? And if you had got the Miovski space correct, right? If you'd signed an experienced signing in there as a striker to rotate with Chermity, because that is exactly what Thelwell will tell us at that fan meeting. The idea was you'd flip the two of them and you'd have an experienced striker and a young striker, and then, you'd bleed them in and all this stuff. See if we got the right guy there, we would have had a wee bit more experience on the park on Sunday that could do the job and could alleviate some of the pressure on the entire squad. We're missing a key experienced striker, and we're missing our more responsible players, Nico Raskin and Diamandi, people that should be turning up and chipping in with a goal here or there. They're not doing that. So you can't just talk about mentality and isolation, Cammy. I'm talking about the not just you, I'm talking about support. We fixate on it. And this is why I'm so fastidious in my belief that if this season doesn't go to plan and we finish second, third, fourth, I still think that there's room to grow, and it's about recruitment, and we've still got so much kind of surgery to do to this squad, because then if you get the right players that can and the right experience, and you get the right results in the right moments, and you build together, that's where the mentality comes from. Celtic, Ange Postecoglou, easy for me to say, but things like that. His team is built on the killer goal that Kyogo or somebody else would get when they didn't deserve it, but it won them the game, or that took them to 2-0 and the game was deed. All that kind of stuff matters, and we're just struggling to do that. So it still starts with football, and the mentality will come, but I do think we need more experience, Cammy. That's a long way of saying that I back Rule. And I think that the chat around, should he be here or should he not, I think it's fucking nonsense. He's been here 5 months. If you think somebody can fix all the things that are wrong with our team and our squad and our club within 5 months, you're not realistic. It's a magic wand you want.
Listen, I totally agree with you in terms of, I've had conversations already with people with Danny Rule. Martin and I spoke about it last week, where I think Rangers managers pay the sins of their predecessors. So he's another Clement, or he's another Beale, or he's another whatever, right? That's how we tend to look at it in that optic, and that'll no change until we win the league. That's just what's going to happen, right? That's where we are with it. I think that you can, by the way, I think the mentality issue, and the point I make that is because when we get to this stage of a league run-in, which we've not been involved in far too long, mentality is king, because it is about being able to get yourself over the line and going away to Falkirk and Kilmarnock and Tannadice and whatever, and just getting a result. That's what has to happen. And sometimes you'll play brilliantly, sometimes you'll have overwhelming shoots of quality, and other times it'll be, right, you're stuck in the mud and you just need to win, and then you get a nasty result, but you get the result and then you're away up the road. And the problem that this Rangers team has, and I'm going to emphasise the point that you made earlier on as well, Andy, on that. We are talking in October, November kind of time about the lack of quality within this Rangers team. Yes, we've made signings in January, and I think 3 out of the 4 of them have done well. Romans in particular, I think, has been the shining star. Chikwani I like. Nadiri, I think, has got quality in there as well. So we'll take it in there. Scovolson, I'm not writing off, right? But you're asking me if I want to spend £10 million on him right now. Absolutely not a chance. So I think he's got room to grow across the course of now until the end of the season. And he's got single figures worth of games to be able to make that happen. So there is still that quality element. So my counter argument to people when they're talking about moving out Danny Rule is he needs to be able to get that summer window. He needs, and yes, I'm sorry for the repetition, because it feels like we get to this stage of the season and it's always the same caveat. Let's have an overhaul in the summer. Let's get rid of some of that stuff. But there's a core nucleus of players in there that I think we now have to move on, whether they're being sold or whether or not they're just coming to the end of their natural playing time. We need a complete revamp of what then has to happen, and then give them from that. Now, one of the things I'd kind of mentioned before was, okay, so if we get to December, is December a fair report card in terms of where we're at in the league? Do we have the League Cup? And where are we within Europe? And if you can't pass that report card in December, then I think it's more than acceptable to revisit this conversation. But right now, as things stand, we need stability. We don't need more upheaval at a manager level for somebody else to be able to come in, peter through these, pre-season nonsense in terms of the signings and whatever else has to happen at that point to implement a fresh game plan. I think Danny Rule is beginning to build on that, and he's got credit in the bank at the moment. But for me, I think a lot of the support question it just now because, as I say, we're at the business end of the season and the quality is dire amongst the those going for the league. Hearts have been able to churn out results, and I think they've got a couple of good players within there as well. They're no world beaters. Celtic have been a bin fire, and it makes last Sunday even worse because even when they've got so many regular starters out, we couldn't put them to the sword. Everyone agrees in that opinion, I think. But as things stand at the moment, we need to be able to see how these players can react to the stuttering that's happened across the course of the last few weeks, the exit to the Scottish Cup, and do they have the metal, the gravitas, what about it with them to be able to say, actually, the prize is within sight. I am going to do everything I possibly can for this team to make that happen. That's where I've got big question marks.
Mentality and belief are two different things, right? And I think the belief is more important than mentality just now because I don't know. I don't think the Rangers support believe that we can win the league. Do I believe we can win the league? I do, but do I really believe we're going to win the league? No, I don't, for the reasons I've mentioned already. Listen, you've got mentality until you've got it. You've not got mentality until you've got it, and you need the closest kind of analysis we can make of a Rangers' growth of mentality was the Gerrard years. It took 3 years to get to where we were in 55, and if you think about the 55 season, which was one of the best Rangers teams I've seen football-wise, mentality-wise, everything, it didn't just happen in a vacuum. There was a bit of pain. We're feeling a bit too much pain just now, but you think back to the League Cup final, played in Matthew Park, get beat by an offside goal. You had moments in Old Firm games where you're close but no cigar, and then eventually you turn the tide. And I honestly think that we'll fall short this year. I think that Sunday is an example of why the squad is still nowhere near good enough to expect what we expect, because that bench we had, I've spoken about how young our forward line was, right? But the bench we had, there was nobody on there that really you would hang your hat on and trust, and there was experienced players in there like Tav, Barami, Miovski, right? There's 3 senior players in our squad, and you're like, they're not what we need for this game. So there's still surgery to be made, and it's a journey, and it's a bit of a cliche, but we do need to look forward, and we do need a bit of continuity. And I think chopping and changing managers is a problem. Perfection is a barrier to progress, right? And what I mean by that is you've got to look over the piece. In the last 5-6 games, there have been too many draws, and some of the performances have been some standard, and there's been moments that have cost us badly. But over the piece, you've got to say that it's night and day for where we were with Martin. The next challenge for Danny Role is to make it night and day for where we are now next season. And I think he deserves it. And unless there's something really, really cataclysmic happens between now and the end of the season, and what I mean by that is like we get tankings here or there and Foster shit, I think he's got to be there next season. I think the board and the owners will be fairly resolute in that, because I think they'll be probably thinking along the same lines as me in terms of continuity. And the recruitment's been better. You highlighted we spent a few bob in January, and Romans, Chukwani and Nadiri, I think, are quality additions. They're finding their feet, they're not ready. But they're finding their feet, and I think anybody that watches Rangers can see that they're going to contribute big still. Scott Volson's a moments player. I've been really, really disappointed with him, but he has it in his locker to just generate that wee bit of quality that can win or lose a game, and do what the likes of Braga does for Hearts. He can be quiet all game, and then all of a sudden, wow, a bit of magic wins the game for you. He's got to bring it, and he's not going to be here next season unless he brings it. So Sunday, St Mirren. I expect us to take care of business. I think we'll be ready for it, and we just need to get, as baby steps. We just need to get to the split without being any further away for either Hearts or Celtic, and then anything can happen. And I know folk will say it's a tall order. It is a tall order. I'm not saying it's no, but anything can happen. Anything can happen because this isn't a normal season, and that's not a normal top six. That top six can take points off each other any day of the week. So let's just be in there.
See, you can be optimistic when you want to be.
What are you talking about? I'm Mr. Optimism. You know me, follow me on Twitter. I'm the one that's saying, look, keep the fire burning. Let's not just give up. It's not over until it is over, right? And if we want our team and we're talking about belief in mentality and all the rest of it, you've got to just carry that fact that it's not over until it's over. And anything can happen. Celtic are not a good team. There's not that much between us. Hearts are Hearts, right? They've had an exceptional season. They've got a couple of match winners in their squad. But this in Motherwell, they've outperformed every metric that they could possibly have outperformed this season by a country mile. Can that last forever for a false duration of a season? Who knows? So this is why I'm like, no, you've just got to catch your breath a wee bit and say, no, this isn't normal territory, man. Everything that we know for the last 10, 15 years does not apply this season. Because see, if it did, we wouldn't be sitting here talking like this. The league would be poor because Celtic would have won it.
So what you're saying is you need to maintain an optimistic mentality. So in a roundabout way, you've kind of agreed with my point. And I do like that, Andy. I've been able to get you on.
What was your point? I forget.
I know. If you want to maintain an optimistic mentality, then why not join the Rangers Youth Development Company's Lotto campaign? Heart and Hand is delighted to be sponsored by the RYDC. John Gregg, Richard Goff, Lorenzo Amoruso and Barry Ferguson, 4 legendary Rangers captains and faces of the RYDC's latest Lotto campaign. Over 18s can play and weekly prizes are on offer until plus end of month jackpots of at least £12,000 in 4-week months and £15,000 in 4-week months as well. Visit www.rydc.co.uk for full details on all products and how to be able to sign up for the Rangers Lotto. Thank you to Mike Lee and Paul Myers. If you'd like to hear more from us on Heart and Hand, then please join us on our Patreon site, which is patreon.com/Heart and Hand, and you will get a Rangers show every single day, and it's only going to cost you a couple of quid a month. My final link, as I say thank you to my guest tonight, if you have got time, folks, please head on to www.andymcgowanbalaclavas.com where you'll get an absolutely stunning deal on all of your face masks and coverings.
I can guarantee all are hand knitted by me in front of my TV at night.
Andy, thank you so much for coming on. I know that we've had a lot to kind of chew over, and my thanks, sincerely my thanks to all the listeners for sticking through it for the business end of an hour. But I've massively enjoyed it. I always appreciate getting your point of view, regardless. But yeah, you've been a great guest this week. Thank you so much, my friend.
You're always so nice to me, Cammy. I've just checked. My blood pressure's absolutely through the roof. This isn't good for me. It's no good for me. It's no good for me going to games. It's no good for me being on Twitter. And then I come on Heart and Hand and I actually let everybody see how uptight and fucking easily combustible I am. I need to speak to somebody.
And I won't even head out the part where you called it Celtic Park either. That's how kind of
Listen, right. That's going to haunt me now, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Right, well, listen, go and get some Ovaltine, get a wee bath, make sure that you get yourself ready for the weekend because you've got a big day out on Sunday in Paisley.
Yeah.
Everyone, if you're going to the game, enjoy it. Make sure that Rangers get the 3 points as well, which I'm confident we will. I agree with Andy's optimism. We have to go and take care of business. And it doesn't matter anything at all that happens on Saturday that might fall in our favour. We need to be able to go and take care of business. So it's over to Rangers. David will be back with you on the flagship on Monday to unpack that game in Paisley and hopefully talking about a resolute Rangers victory. And I'll be back with you again next week. Thanks to you all for listening, and we'll speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.